So how this session came about is that Alfredo and I had a chat about the things that are new in Azure that have been announced after Ignite. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we could do an AMA and just talk about the stuff that was announced, but wasn't necessarily mature. And so this is today's AMA. Alfredo, may I ask that you maybe put up a notepad with a bunch of topics, and then that can spark some questions in terms of those topics.
I haven't put any topics, but
that's all right. We can stick some topics in there. Why don't we put WVD on there?
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's been happening there at the moment. So, yeah. Cool. I think at the moment, Nick, some of the biggest things that is been coming out is, especially after Ignite, and that is things like well-architected framework and cloud adoption framework. There's been massive amount of changes there. So what the Microsoft team has done, including myself, is automated a lot of the services now that you need for the services. So like, for example, landing zones and blueprints, there's actually been a ton of information and repos that's been published on GitHub, where you can actually now automate your landing zone deployment for specific workloads like AKS, Kubernetes, same thing, SQL environments and things like that. So there's been a massive amount of investment on that. There is in preview a SAP and app modernization in preview at the moment on the GitHub to do the automated deployments of those services as well. So from network to all the different artifacts. So I can actually show you guys what it looks like now. It's actually looking pretty cool. So I think that's been some of the biggest things that's been coming out from our space. Let me just open here. So if we look at this, there's actually a whole lot of content here where there's ebooks and that's available, where you actually can, there's also one for WVD, by the way, where you can actually now automate the whole deployment with the GitHub repo using Cloud Adoption Framework, where it covers everything you need as per CAF. So this is some of the big things that we have been looking at. Actually just did a presentation this week on it.
Alfredo, if you don't mind just dumping the links for anything that you show into the chat as well, please.
Sure, I'll do that now. I'm just opening all the tools for that. So let me just open here quickly, because I was speaking this about a few minutes ago. So what Microsoft's done is they've actually automated the landing zone that you can see on my screen, and the generic landing zones for migrations as well as innovation. So making sure that there's policies for you to use, best practices for networking deployment, storage optimizations, and VMs. What they've done is they've actually gone into specific workload scenarios as well for this. So I'm just trying to get to it as well.
Alfredo, so talking about landing zones, we've come across a customer or two where they've obviously read the Cloud Adoption Framework documentation, and they have blueprints, and they're deploying landing zones per app or per environment. And what they're ending up with is thousands of things that could be centralized and only need one of. So as an example, key vaults. So for every app, they're using a blueprint. They're creating a landing zone which includes an Azure Key Vault, and now they've got thousands of key vaults that they have to manage individually, where they could have some kind of central key vault management. So that I'm hoping that the sort of V2 of Cloud Adoption Framework with the automation takes into consideration some of the things that could be consolidated for an organization.
So I'm showing the screen now. It's called Enterprise Scale. Okay, so Enterprise Scale is something that Microsoft is putting a lot of emphasis on. Is around how to scale your environment. So using a single key vault or a single hub and spoke, and doing the deployments from start to end. So having the same conditional access that's available and doing deployment. So enterprise scale is being worked on continuously, but it is basically to build the foundation and then identify how do you scale the organizations using common services or shared services like Key Vault, networking,
Exactly.
Active Directory, monitoring, all of those type of services. So it is actually in work in progress. It is still being worked on. And we've actually got some dummy examples from the networking perspective as well. So it has been something that is being requested on, and you can actually go and do a deployment, or you can actually go and look at the description of the deployment of what's happening there. But the idea, the idea is that you use, for example, Azure Monitor, Azure Policy, Security Center, which is then applied to everything that's in the different landing zones at the bottom.
No, that's awesome. But now the gap is getting customers that have already deployed stuff in separate landing zones into the enterprise scale model now. So cleaning up or managing those key vaults, for example. I don't know if you can migrate key vaults into something. But then the networking.
You can centralize. You can definitely centralize. So with that, we've got centralize. We've got WAF. Now WAF is actually addressing all of these workloads as well. So part of WAF is to automate, or well architecture framework is actually to automate and look at the different areas. So I'm just bringing that onto my screen now as well. And there's a lot of tools for this as well. So there is a significant amount of tools here. The idea is that as part of well-architected framework, you need to look at cost optimizations. So the idea is to make sure that everything is cost effective and you're reducing your costs in terms of infrastructure so you can repurpose that cost in other programs. There's operational excellence. So are you running everything as it's supposed to, following best practices? Do you have duplicates of areas? How do you prove that as well? So that's the operational excellence portion. So that's addressing where you've got multiple services. Then there's performance. So is your machine running? Is it adapting to what the workloads are? Does it need to work on scale? So all of these 5 pillars is actually what you see in Azure Monitor. But what's happened is, they've actually got a lot of principles on how to create and modernize a lot of these things. And they've actually got categories now as part of the design for well-architected frameworks. So if you want to do something specific to media or to SAP, how do you actually factor all of these as part of the designs and that? And then there's a tool. So let me just open that one because I need to open that one. So there's a bunch of tools now that you can automate all of this as well. So if you go speaking to the customer, you can actually give them a dashboard where they can actually build all of this. So let me just open for you to show you some of the stuff as well. There it is. I see our other big boss is there, Warren. Warren?
Yes, sir.
Long time no speak. You don't want to talk to me no more.
It has been a while. It's actually sad since we have the same role.
Are you guys doing any customers specifically around WAF and that at the moment?
Yes, we are. We're trying to push them as hard as we possibly can, actually. And especially when it comes to the enterprise scale, pushing landing zones, because we're getting to a point where these enterprises are getting so big and moving so quick that managing and tagging and policies and restrictions and cost optimization is all becoming a disaster for a lot of the big organizations. And so enterprise scale is incredibly important.
Yeah. Okay, this is just some assessments that I'm busy looking at. Yeah, so if you look at it, Matt, I think one of the things, and just confirmed, is as customers are adopting, and if you look at the amount of changes that is happening within cloud, think about it. Like today, you've got some access for Arc. Tomorrow, there's a new flavor, version 2 of Arc. Has the customer moved from version 1 to version 2? And well-architected framework and enterprise scale is to actually address all of these needs, is that as the customer starts adopting or when a new next best practice comes out, how does it go through? I see we got a hands up there.
That's Glenn. A good question, Alfredo. I will just also ask on behalf of our attendees here. Speaking of a well-architected framework, we've seen a huge demand in those, and from my experience, I can attest to that. But my question is around management groups and subscriptions. What type of subscription qualifies you to use management groups? Can a customer under CSP or Microsoft Direct, or which subscription definitely qualifies you to use management groups? Because we might be discussing this, but some of the customers are actually doing Microsoft Direct. Do we have that feature built into such subscriptions, or do you need to be enterprise EA agreement in order to use management groups? Thanks.
So there is actually a design for enterprise scale. Let me just open it up for you. It doesn't matter if you're an EA, CSP, MOSA, and that. There's actually a document. So this is the enterprise scale architecture. This is what I was looking for, which actually documents let me just swap here a bit. That actually documents how to do a subscription layout and what you need to do from a subscription layout. So I did training this week with a lot of the partners where you can actually look at it. So in the design principle, the idea is to make sure that the subscription is democratized. So that means it doesn't matter what subscription you have, the people who are using that subscription is following the management, the business needs, the policies, everything. So all the guardrails is built around the subscription. It doesn't matter if it's an EA, CSP, or whatever. You can actually have multiple subscriptions involved. And I know a lot of customers are doing this. I know a lot of partners are speaking to me about it, but I'm sure this is something that Warren is also working towards as well, is where the subscription is basically a unit of management. So I'm just going through the design principles. Yeah.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to create subscriptions, because obviously if you have to look at the 2-3 years ago, there was an idea around creating as little subscriptions as possible, which has now changed. So ideally work at separating your services. So you'll have like a networking subscription with all of your firewalls and things inside it. And then you can have sort of monitoring subscriptions where your log analytics accounts sit for security, et cetera. And then you'll have like a subscription where you've got your spokes. And so, for instance, if you're using a hub and spoke model, a subscription can be deployed with a VNet, with the required routes, with the peering, with private linked endpoints, all in one go. And then the application owner has the ability to do whatever they want in that subscription, but at least you know that the networking is going the right way. You know that they're not allowed to deploy public IP addresses if they don't want. Do you know what I mean? So the subscription becomes just quick and easy.
It's democratized
to deploy. Yeah, democratized. That's it.
Yeah, so on my screen, I'm actually displaying the just some of the design considerations. It's subscription organization governance. There must be a management structure that you have in AD, and then after that, you configure the subscription with the necessary quotas and capacities and all of those type of things. And from there, the end user, whatever access they got, should be able to use it. But yeah, you pretty much can use anything you want, use it for anything. And you can actually now have 6 subscriptions within so you can have a central subscription, and within that you can actually have 6 subscriptions down, excluding the root subscription. So if you look at
in a management group.
In a management group, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So imagine you can have one management group with 6 different subscriptions now. And if we're looking at some of the large customers at the moment, there's a huge amount of customers at the moment that are looking at, because they've got lots of business units. Let's use some of the banks. Warren is, I know, working with some of the banks. There's so many different business units, and within the business units, there's so many different operations or different teams, and they all want to have their own DevOps projects or management or whatever. So they want to have that flexibility to do whatever they need to without having to go through a central team every time. The central team just defines the policies and the governance.
So why is the limit 6? Why should there be a limit to the number of subscriptions associated to a management group?
So at the moment, it's actually a back-end challenge. Reason being, if you think of it, a subscription is a measurement of unit, and there's always obviously some contractual agreement. And if you look at from a financial or an economics perspective, it's actually, that's where the limitation is at the moment, is where our books can only handle a certain amount of things. But I believe they're going to change that in February or January, is what I understand. To the team. So it's just like a hard set rule at the moment. And remember, as we progress and see the demand, we will start changing those limits later on.
Good.
Okay. Any questions? Further questions? Comment you want to add there, Warren? Because I know you guys are getting a lot of these things as well.
Management groups. Do it.
Make your life easier. Okay, cool. I actually got all, there's actually a long list of tools that we have and links that's actually got all of this stuff. So what I'll do is I'll share it with things. So we've actually got a schema for enterprise scale. We've actually got a reference implementation, and we've got the design guides that covers all of this. So it's literally to help you guys go forward and actually take your foundation. So on my screen now, you can actually see the foundation. And from there, you can actually do the migration, and then you can actually look at all the things that you look at. So, and it's got all the best practices. So yeah. Yeah, Peter, I should be able to share the deck with you. I have been training a lot of the partners recently on this, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'll send it through to Nick. Okay. Another big topic investment in Microsoft is Synapse. It's actually becoming quite a massive investment. It's not my area of expertise. But with regards to data management and working with Azure Arc and at the hybrid scenario, migration scenarios, and that Synapse is now presenting, it's actually been fast-tracked quite significantly. I'm seeing partners are now using this as a scenario to actually manage multiple database cloud platforms that's been built out. And then they're actually using it a lot for the migration of their data as well, and then integrating it. So we've got some really great partners who are actually now using Synapse as part of their day-to-day management, but they're actually now creating new scenarios where they are pumping data into new visual representation platforms and all of that stuff to make business decisions. So I'm not too, like I said, too strong on that. Warren, what are you guys doing with Synapse on your side?
Well, waiting for it to go live in SA North, I would say is the first thing. But yes, we have a lot of clients moving data around with it, and it's really cool, really quick, provided that the platform is actually here. When we deploy resources in West Europe and the resources that it's looking for are in West Europe as well, the performance is actually quite incredible. Like billions of rows in, just over an hour. It's incredibly quick.
Yeah, I think, like I said, Synapse is a big bet for Microsoft, especially for data movement and that. I know it's not available in South Africa, but a lot of the partners I'm working with in the UAE and that are using it a lot now, especially the airlines and that are definitely using it as a way of managing their data a little bit better. So a little bit of fun, but we'll see how it progresses. Azure Arc. Now that's a painful subject. So there's been quite a bit of changes with Azure Arc within the region and that. There's a lot of investment that's happening due to a lot of the customers in the Middle East Africa region requiring data sovereignty or even data residency. Azure Arc has become the option or choice as well. So there's been a lot of the investment in terms of what's happening around hybrid cloud is where Azure Arc fits in. And we're noticing at the moment it's really great for Kubernetes and a little bit with OpenShift, but there's a huge demand, and on the roadmap is to start managing VMware and that. What's one of the announcements that has come through is Azure Arc is now working with VMware vRealize to automate deployments within VMware and VMware services, so actually leveraging those type of services. And Azure Arc is also being engaged with from IBM on their IBM Open Orchestrator, which is one of their tools which does some of the automation as well. So there's been a lot of engagement with the partners to manage this from as well. The idea is to actually start using this to manage anything that's got a distribution in a remote fashion. So my opinion, and this is my opinion, is that it's actually going to be probably integrated with like IoT and some of those services to manage those devices. But yeah, Warren, are you seeing Arc a lot in South Africa as a request?
I wouldn't say as a request, but we've got a lot of clients, especially in the FSR space, doing proof of concepts around it, because we know that they will always have a multi-cloud strategy, always.
Yeah.
So and as I said a little bit earlier in the presentation was that when it comes to RBAC and management and access and identity, most clients their identities are in Azure Active Directory. I mean, it's an Active Directory-based identity, and the ability to push that through to other resources anywhere else is a big one. As well as the desired state configuration. I think gone are the days where everybody needs a massive sort of SCCM environment. I suppose that the one slight difference, however, is obviously when it comes to the update management, we're looking at OS level stuff. There isn't necessarily patching of applications as you would with SCCM. So it's not a complete replacement, update management, but it's getting there.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, the hybrid cloud is becoming quite a big topic.
Yeah, it's never going to go away.
Yeah, I know some of the banks that I'm speaking to in Africa, which are Pan-African banks, are looking at the Azure Arc stuff, and then even some of the clients in Saudi are looking at, because they've got quite rigid data sovereignty things. My opinion is I think Azure Arc is still too immature this is Alfredo's opinion, not Microsoft's opinion, in terms of what it can do and what it's promising to do. There's a lot of other tool sets that's out there, like vRealize, HP Open Orchestrator. What's the products from Cisco's got some products as well, where they've been doing this for the last like 10, 15 years, and we are now just coming into that space. So there is quite a bit of challenges. Like I know, for example, you can monitor service, but you can't, and you can force policy, but you can't power off, powered on devices, those type of things. So I have heard a lot of complaints about that. But yeah, let's see what that looks like there. WVD, Warren, you want to talk about WVD, what you're doing, and then some of the things.
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's well, you know what? We've seen incredible uptake, especially again considering the control plane is available here. But we, with regards to the scale and the pricing that we can achieve, we're giving Citrix a really good run for their money. WVD is incredibly quick and easy to deploy, and we can scale like within minutes. So it's, yeah, we've seen, especially with COVID and Teams optimization and those sorts of things, all behind the multi-session. And I guess, you know, with the licensing, you know, when people have their Microsoft 365 licenses already, means that they don't need any additional licensing when they start using it. So yeah, we've seen a huge uptake in WVD here.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask about WVD and the app masking functionality. I see there's I don't know how much you know about it, Warren. Technically, how the FS Logix app masking features work. You know, so you can provision. You have your session host with all of your apps, but you basically provide specific sets of applications to users based on security groups, and that's all done with the FS Logix app masking functionality. That I think is a big deal as well, because previously you had to have separate session hosts with the suites of apps for different what do you call them, user profiles, user personas. And now you can have one, you know, golden image which has all of the apps, but then the different user personas only get the apps that are applicable to them, because everything else is masked.
Profile container.
Yeah. So I mean, we know about the profile containers, FS Logix, so that you know, you can have some persistent storage for profile files, etc. But now this is going a step further and saying, okay, well, these applications are available to you because you're part of a specific group. And so I guess my question is, how far along are we with that app masking? How far along is Microsoft and the partnership with FS Logix?
Oh, we bought them.
We bought them.
Well, yes, okay.
So with regards to the FS Logix, there actually has been quite a number of changes. I haven't had a chance to review it, but I'm busy looking at our field guide now. And on my screen, you should see the FS Logix in terms of everything that's been happening now recently. So there's a whole lot of best practices that they have now built into it. In terms of the masking, I'm not quite sure. Pool scenarios.
So I saw something the other day on Twitter that they're right now app masking is done with PowerShell, but there is coming soon a portal UI, so that you can manage the app masking.
Yeah, I know the app masking portion has been a bit of a challenge because it's all been done via PowerShell. There's a well-documented step-by-step process. It was supposed to be end of this calendar year. That app masking was supposed to be in a portal, but based on what I'm seeing on the thing, they pushed it out to Q1 in the next calendar year that the app masking should be in the portal. So there's no dependency on that as well. So yeah, like I said, that's going to be some of the big things that's happening as well there. I'm just looking at some of the other stuff that's here with this stuff. One of the updates is actually around, there's two updates that I have seen that's come out this week. Is one of them is the endpoint manager is now available. So I believe you can now manage all your desktops from a central point via portal instead of the PowerShell. So that helps a lot. So it gives us a little bit of availability. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to review it, but it is at least public preview. So you can actually start now managing all your devices from a central point, pushing devices. What I'm seeing on the screen is iOS, Mac OS, Android, and Windows is now available as part of this as well. So that's pretty cool as well. And then there is also disaster recovery. So they've actually finalized the document around disaster recovery for planning for WVD as well. So you can actually now do replication of the virtual machines, still own within PowerShell, but you can actually now do replication and all of these types of services within WVD. And then there is an FS Logic configuration guide as well. So that was announced on the 10th. Okay, so just a few days ago.
That was what my email was about, Alfredo.
Yes, that was your email about.
DDR for WVD.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the window.
Yeah, can you? Thanks.
There we go.
Appreciate it.
So it looks like a step-by-step guide on actually how to set up disaster recovery now for WVD. So this is going to help probably a lot of customers.
It's leveraging ASR, right?
I don't know. I haven't read it. It's only come out like 2 days ago. So I haven't had the opportunity to read it. Warren should be reading all of this, man. You know, he should be.
Well, the fact that it says VM replication means means site recovery. Yes.
ASR. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything. So it seems there's a bit of a trend with regards to ASR at the moment. If you use Azure Site Recovery, but it's
with Azure Site Recovery.
Yeah. See, it seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment is we're using Azure Site Recovery for a lot, but then we're also masking it as well. So you'll see, like, for instance, Azure Migrate is Azure Site Recovery in the background, but it's managed, you know. Maybe perhaps people were leaving the vaults active and unattached disks and costing people money and things like that. So, you know.
So I know at the beginning of the year, they were actually talking about consolidating Azure Migrate and ASR into one product. With the acquisition of Mover as well, Mover is actually being pushed quite hard into migrating into Azure Migrate as well. So I think Azure Migrate is going to be the main tool, which will then centrally manage everything from that. So something similar like what Azure Monitor does, which does all the logging for things like a security center, Sentinel, and so on. So we'll have to see what happens in that space as well. So it's been, like I said.
Remember, we also have availability zone support though, hey, for WVD.
Yeah. When is the availability zones is now in South Africa, isn't it? Or due for South Africa?
Well, it goes GA within the next 2 months or so, give or take.
Yeah. So availability zones is now available in South Africa, so that's or will be Let's just say that. So
And
that's
we
gonna-
have 3, which is also pretty cool.
In ZA North, right?
Yeah, so ZA North will have 3 separate physical data centers.
data centers, yes.
So separate everything.
Power.
So
cooling.
we don't need Cape Townians anymore. I mean Cape Town. I mean
Yeah, that's all they do is cause trouble and give us headaches, eh?
That's what we say when we can't go to the beach because there's so many cars on the road with GP number plates.
you have enough cars already.
We have limited road.
Cool.
From a BCDR perspective, what we're getting is customers that are deploying WVD into multiple regions, and they're wanting to have, the secondary region as a BCDR for their primary region, but at the same time, it must be the primary region for users that are located in that region or close to that region. So it's a bit of it's not, the BCDR documentation covers your primary region and having a secondary region should something happen to that primary region. But we're seeing customers where they've got users located close to separate regions, and they need to be able to use the region that's closest to them as their primary. So you kind of need to have an active.
Correct. Yeah, that's not BCDR. That's high availability.
Yeah, except though, if there is a disaster in the region, then you need to be able to fail over. Those people that are in region A need to be able to use region B's resources and not contend with the users that are based in region B for resources, even though it's the same set of host pools, same workspaces, etc. So it's kind of like duplicating everything. So that's a challenge we face.
And then they don't want to pay for it on top of it.
Well, no, I think they're willing to pay for it. It's just it requires a duplication. So you can't have stuff sitting in an active standby kind of thing in the secondary region that can just, rather than having VMs replicated and then in the instance of a disaster spin them up, they want to have stuff sort of sitting there idling but active, so that there's the active availability. Anyway,
But that's okay though, because it should scale, right? So if nobody's using it, then it's just one machine sitting there, and then as soon as it starts to get used, it'll scale up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't had any of those challenges. So everything is normally just one region at the moment. So I think you're just complicating things, mate.
Yeah, it's my customers that are complicating things.
Okay, cool. Any questions from the audience around WVD? Very quiet audience for AMA, by the way. Okay, cool. Another big topic that has been popping up extensively is around IoT. There's been quite a large of investments in that, and we've actually started seeing with the introduction of 5G across the region, especially in countries like UAE, and that IoT is actually now becoming quite mainstream in terms of how customers are actually engaging with their clients in a lot of scenarios. So there's been some interesting developments where 5G has actually been built into some of these IoT devices to start providing a lot more interesting telemetry going forward. So I suspect with the whole announcement of 5G and our acquisition of one or two companies for IoT, 5G. The IoT field is probably going to scale quite massively. We've seen a lot of requests, especially in insurance, working with some of the telecommunications companies to actually build IoT solutions for their mining and their buildings in detecting and predicting any potential damage to buildings, to vehicles, or any assets as well. So some interesting things coming along that space as well. Warren, are any of your clients looking at IoT much?
Not the clients that I deal with on a daily basis, to be honest.
Yeah, your guys are still trying to figure out the bigger headaches at the moment.
Yeah, they are. I mean, look, I suppose there's always the sort of end user banking, ATMs, those sorts of things that has an IoT aspect with Sphere and those sorts of things. But I know that Dimension Data is doing a lot of work around IoT and around the mines, where they're putting edge devices down, or edge gateways, and then they're putting devices inside the trucks to monitor their tire temperature or if the driver's awake, and those sorts of things. And how heavy the load is in the bin, and if somebody's stealing the rocks because it's being the weight is different from when it was picked up. I know that they're doing quite a bit of work there.
Yeah, I've actually seen some interesting things with IoT, with the LPG, the low pressure gas, your gas bottles, where one of the partners in that's actually built a solution to detect theft of LPG gas bottles, and actually doing a whole lot of tracking as well. So that's been pretty interesting in terms of the use cases. Another one I've seen is also around petrol and transporting of fuel to the different fuel stations, and doing something similar like that as well. So it's been really, really interesting. And then one of the other things I've actually seen is customers, well, one customer who handles all the livestock trading in South Africa, he's actually built a whole IoT solution that helps with livestock trading, pulling information from RFIDs and blockchain into one thing so that they can do bidding. And they're actually scoring some big deals. They're the first company in the world that does livestock trading using IoT solutions. So some awesome stuff that's coming out from the different scenarios, and it's been quite creative. I think the mining's been overdone. The ATMs, I know I've been working with the banks on the ATM IoT monitoring. So with the ATMs, we actually can now detect with the surrounding areas as well, and do some automation around powering down ATMs, locking down the bins, or whatever the case, if there's going to be a blast as well at the ATMs. Man, we've got some really interesting problems here in South Africa, to be honest. But yeah, so it's been pretty interesting here. So, okay, cool. Mr. Matt, you wanted to talk about security and compliance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not really equipped to talk about it, but I know that there were some updates. So I thought we were talking about Ignite and, things that were announced at Ignite. And so I had a quick look at the book of news for Ignite, and some of the things from a security and compliance perspective are the Microsoft Defender and the whole name changing of that suite of products. And you showed Microsoft Defender managing endpoints for WVD just now in Microsoft Defender. So you can add those WVD hosts into Microsoft Defender. But there's some other announcements that were made. Then there's some compliance features that are now available in Microsoft Teams, some advanced e-discovery stuff for Teams. And I've seen, in fact, I had I experienced it just now in the chat. I clicked on the links and the safe URL protection in Microsoft Teams kicked in. Unfortunately, it couldn't verify. What did it say? We can't check the safety of this website right now. So I don't know if that's where that problem was. But anyway, there's obviously some safe links features in Teams now available, where before that wasn't the case. So that's something to just bear in mind.
Let me just check.
That was
I don't know much about
why.
Teams. I don't know about the Teams security in it. Let me just look at some of the other stuff here. Everything around security is around Teams, modern workplace.
There's also conditional access policy enhancements. So now there's APIs that can allow you to manage conditional access policies at scale. So you can create policies, create logic apps to manage those policies. So there's a whole framework now with conditional access policies that allows you to automate conditional access policies and manage them. So that's pretty cool. User lifecycle management. So there's deep integration with the third-party software as a service applications into AAD. So you can provision users in those third-party SaaS applications using entitlements, etc. So that's also big stuff.
So one of the big things from Azure that I'm aware of is the protection of containers. So I know they've done a lot on Defender to now support Kubernetes and actually doing container level security monitoring and hardening on some of the images as well. So I know that is one of the new things that I picked up a few weeks ago when I was doing some hacks and that. So I know that's quite big. And then on the IoT, there's also quite a lot of, they're using Security Center now to actually do some of the hardening for IoT devices. So that I'm seeing from Azure quite a bit side of things. Let's just check here. Are you seeing anything on the container side, Warren?
Container side, sorry. Repeat that.
Security, compliance, because I'm seeing lots for Teams and all of that, but nothing. The only thing I'm seeing is around containers being the only one for security.
Yeah, we did add a bunch of stuff around container security with Azure Container Registry and advanced threat protection on containers that we actually start inspecting. We can inspect the stuff that's happening. Yeah, we can not just the image though, actually running on the Kubernetes cluster itself. So, like for instance, we'll do checks to see if, because one of the more popular things is people hack in or compromise container images to run crypto miners, and then the Kubernetes clusters start running crypto miners because infinite scale, etc., etc. So we'll detect that the crypto miner is running inside the container and then either alert or remediate. So we can actually scan the running stuff that's on the cluster itself.
Yeah, I know they did the image hardening and that, so that I'm definitely aware of. I'm just looking at this. Oh, Security Center can now actually do a security posture for Google and AWS as well. That's pretty cool. Let me just look. I haven't had a chance to log into Security Center at the moment. I'm just checking what's new on the Security Center side. I haven't logged in for a while. Yeah, I think you're right. Like the security side, there's a lot of stuff that's being done, but it looks like it's mostly on the end user side. Okay, so it looks like we've got an interesting question. Does Azure comply with POPIA and SA? Are there specific features around the compliance? So let's see what Alistair says. Okay, so that is also new. Seeing that Alistair is on mute. Alistair, where is the Poppy template?
He says in Compliance Manager, so I assume you can import the template in Compliance Manager. I think it's a separate portal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. Azure Compliance Manager. See, it's all in Office 365.
Yeah,
so there's one for Office 365. I'm not seeing something for Azure. So it might meet the Office 365 options. Definitely not the Azure portion. Definitely not Azure, because I haven't seen anything.
Maybe it is part of the policies, one of the policy templates in Azure. Azure policy.
No. So if I actually
go
into the compliance, I need to change my subscription because I've been looking for something as well, and I know there's nothing. And if I actually go to Microsoft Trust Center, I'll tell you now if it is compliance offerings. There's government regional. I don't see anything there. I definitely don't see anything there. Because I had to help with a tender recently for this. Let's go look at regional.
But wouldn't GDPR be a starting point?
Yeah, I normally refer to GDPR because it's a lot more stringent than
Poppy.
It's a lot more stringent for them. In addition to general laws.
So what you're saying is if you're compliant to GDPR, there's Poppy, yeah. Chances are you'll be Poppy compliant.
Yeah. So this is the law, but I don't see anything in terms of this. So yeah, I think we need to maybe explore. There might be a template, definitely not for Azure. I definitely don't see anything for Azure specifically. Okay, cool. We got 5 minutes. Any questions from anyone? Final comments? Nick's been way too quiet.
I talk so much, I don't mind taking a back seat. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Okay, cool.
Alistair's typing. We'll let him finish typing.
I have a question for the team. Is anyone seeing a lot of Oracle popping up in terms of Oracle coming in and trying to compete with you guys?
No, more, well, for us, we've more seen moves from Oracle on-premises to SQL or Oracle to Azure, but not really Oracle competing with Azure.
Okay, does anyone know that there's an Oracle data center landing next year?
I didn't.
So Oracle is actually launching 4 new data centers in our region, Israel, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa next year in Johannesburg. And just so that everyone is aware, they are actually heavily discounting a lot of the services that you are getting. licensing, compute, everything. So some interesting things that I've seen there from a development is popping up all of a sudden from Oracle. So I was just quite keen to see if you guys are seeing any of this stuff, because Oracle's opening a data center and IBM.
So Vince mentioned something about a year ago around some kind of, I don't know if it's a partnership or link between, was it Azure and Oracle, Microsoft and
Azure?
Oracle?
It's Oracle link, so we could actually plug in to have an express route directly from our data center to the Oracle data center. It's not available in South Africa. It's only available in certain regions. But if you look at it this way, why have a link to the Oracle data center if you can actually have your own Oracle environment? So it's predominantly really good for all the Oracle workloads, Fusion and things like that. So just something I found interesting recently.
Anyone know about AWS data centers? Since we're talking about other clouds.
Well, it's an interesting topic because it is impacting and changing the ecosystem. IBM is also launching a data center. The IBM Cloud is also launching a data center next year.
Mm-hmm.
What service are IBM launching with that?
Mainframe, the mainframe offering, and some. They want to also have the OpenShift platform running on it as well. So, speaking to some friends of mine at IBM, that's some of the main things they're targeting. They're trying to target all the banks to go managed mainframe. So that
Mainframe as a service.
Yeah, mainframe as a service. So that kind of impacts the way application modernization might happen as well in the country.
My gosh.
Well, Oracle's actually doing Oracle data as a service, and they're no longer doing this licensing thing. They're going for a services model, and they are aggressive. They are, in some cases, on an infrastructure layer, between 50-60% cheaper than Microsoft and AWS and Huawei.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm just trying to see what you guys are seeing, because it's looking like fun and games. It's becoming quite an aggressive thing. And Oracle's got its own WVD offering that they're busy selling at the moment as well. So.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Like I said, I'm asking questions because I'm trying to see what you guys are seeing, hearing from the customers and market.
Yeah, I'm not aware. Very happy to get the news, or I'm happy that we are hearing the news. Not necessarily happy about more cloud confusion in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think the messaging is going to be, you need to be a lot more crisper going forward when working with cloud. There's definitely some interesting stuff that is happening that's going to cause confusion.
Les, you had a question.
I didn't really have a question. I had a comment.
Please.
And my comment is based on my past experience. If anybody is looking at the Oracle thing, read the fine print very carefully before you sign.
Very carefully, yes. I know. I had a wonderful £300 million bill from them 1 year.
Yeah.
Not rands, pounds.
Yeah.
So but it's just interesting to see how they're competing.
So I know they're aggressive in their pricing, and they normally are very aggressive in their pricing, especially at their first contact. And that's often not the problem. The problem is in the in the future contacts, and where you want to expand the service a bit. That's often, I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but historically they've done that kind of thing in the past. Yeah,
so like year one, they discount you heavily. Year 2, year 3, they start catching up on what they discounted on you. So,
like yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot for your comments so far.
Cool.
We've come up for 12 o'clock. And I don't see any other hands raised. I'm aware that everyone is normally back to back on post-COVID world. So to say thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Glenn and Warren. Thank you to all our speakers. Alistair, any parting words from you? I'm not sure if Alistair is on mute or not. I'm going to assume that he is. Something happened on his side. So with that, let me close down the last Cloud Friday for this year. I wish you all a very, very good festive season. And we look forward to seeing you again on the first Cloud Friday of 2021.
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.